Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining to this course on parenting leave policies in Belgium and inequalities. My name is Laurene Thil. I'm a researcher in Belgium at IVA KU Leuven. I did my PhD on family policies and comparison on family policies, and now I'm working on employment and working condition. So today, let's zoom on the schemes existing in Belgium and the impact on inequalities for different kinds of groups. So in Belgium, what I will talk about today is 4 different types of leave. The first one is quite well known, the maternity leave for mothers. The second is birth leave for fathers or co-parent. The third one is parental leave, and we will see the combination with what we also have in Belgium, naming a time critic system and career breaks for dedicated to care for children. So first of all, the maternity leave, what we call here in Belgium, congé de maternité. So I'm really not good in Dutch, so I will try to focus on the French and the English one. But we will see later on that there are some differences between actually the Flemish part and the Walloon part of Belgium. It's not the case for maternity leave. The length of leave is for employees 15 weeks. And for the self-employed, 12 weeks. You have differences you have the fact that it's mandatory to take some leave before the due date, so 1 week before the due date. And then there are some differences if you're employees or self-employed regarding the number of weeks that you have to take obligatory after the birth. So it's 9 weeks for employees, it's 2 weeks for the self-employed. I won't go into all the details of the payment and the funding because it's quite difficult and complicated in Belgium. You have all the details on the slides. What is important to remember is that for maternity leave, it's funded through the federal health insurance, so financed by employer and employee contribution and general taxation. And you have differences if you are in the private sector, if you are a civil servant, if you are self-employed, or if you are unemployed. So let's take the example of the private sector. For the first month, you will earn 82% of your earnings, and for the remaining weeks, you will earn 75. Sorry. Regarding the eligibility, so all female employees or unemployed are entitled to the maternity leave. It's self-employed workers, mothers can also take maternity leave, but in a separate system, which is actually, as we saw just before, less advantageous than what we have for the employees. There are no differences for the same-sex couples. And for the non-citizens or immigrant workers, everything will depend on their labor market status. We will talk a bit more about this afterwards. Now let's move to the birth leave, what it used to be called paternity leave. And now we have the name congé de naissance because it includes all the parent systems, so all fathers, but also co-parents. The length of the leave is 20 working days. The payment is 100% of earnings for the first 3 days, and those days must be paid by the employer. And then you have the 82% of earnings. Remember, it's the same as what we have in the private sector for mothers on the paternity leave. Everything is funded via the federal health insurance, the same, financed by employer and employee contribution, as well as general taxation. It can be used with flexibility. So it can be taken during the first 4 months after the birth. It can be taken in one term, or you can divide in different periods. And the self-employed workers may take the leave in whole days or half a day. So if they need, for instance, the Wednesday afternoon. For the birth leave, all employees and self-employed are eligible. The unemployed are not. Um, Also, no issue or differences between same-sex and different sex relationships. Now the parental leave, so the congé parental in Wallonia. The length is 4 months per parent. It's an individual leave, which is not transferable. So if, for instance, we have a heterosexual couple, if the father is not taking it, it cannot transfer his 4 months to the mothers. It's 4 months for parents. For the self-employed, it's only 12 weeks. The payment is fixed, so it's €1,000 per month approximately, a bit higher for single parents if you take it full time. And it's a bit higher for single parents. It's funded via the federal health insurance, financed by employers and employees' contribution, exactly what we said again before. Here is where the difficulty starts in Belgium. You have, which is also quite convenient, but you will see later on that for evaluation and for analysis, sometimes it's a bit difficult because for parental leave in Belgium, you have a lot of flexibility in the use. It can be taken full-time, part-time, 1 day of the week, so 20%, or even half a day a week, which is 10%. You can take this into different blocks if you need it, and this is valid until the child is 12. For the parental leave, both parents can take it at the same time. The eligibility is based on your career, on your employment status. So all employees who have completed 1 year's employment with their present employer is eligible. The self-employed workers are not eligible. So that's why before, for the maternity and the birth leave, I always mentioned that the self-employed were eligible, because for the parental leave, it's not the case. Again, here in Belgium, you have no differences for the same-sex couples or adoptive parents. And for the non-citizens or immigrants, it will depend on the labor market status again. Remember, I just told you that you can take really even 10% of leave per week. This is only possible if you have the agreement of the employers. For the other part-time possibilities, the employer cannot really refuse. This is actually to be nuanced. The employers can actually postpone granting the leads up to 3 months if, for instance, in the business that the workers is working in, they cannot do otherwise. So it's really a really intense period, or they don't find anyone else. So they have the right to postpone the leave up to 6 months, but no more. Specificities for the parental leave. Remember, I mentioned already at the very beginning that we have Flanders and Wallonia, so the Dutch-speaking part and the French-speaking part in Belgium. For the parental leave, the Flemish community, so the government in Flanders, they pay an additional benefit for the parental leave, so for a maximum of 1 year. And the amount is not fixed. It really depends on the sector, the employment, the reduction of employment that you take, and so on. But you should know that you also have an additional benefit in the Flemish part of Belgium. Finally, the fourth leave system that I wanted to talk about, so the time credit system, which the crédit temps avec motif, or the time breaks in the public sector, quite similar system. So here you have a length of 1 year full time, if you take it full time. And for this time credit system, you have different reasons to take it. One of these is having a child younger than 8 years. You also see here listed the other reasons, so palliative care, caring for an ill relative, and so on. But you also have this similar reason than the parental leave, which is taking care of a young child. The payment varies according to age, your civil status, the year of employment, and so on. So I won't detail here the payment that you will receive. It's flexible. You can have 1 paid year full-time leave, or you can have 24 months if you take it part-time, 60 months if you take it 1/5, and so on. You need to work 2 years before with the same employer in order to be eligible. And within each company, you have a threshold of 5% of employee who can use their time credit at the same time for the different rules and reasons that I just mentioned before. Here, it's funded by the federal social security system, so not the same as the leaves I described before. Recent changes in Belgium. So it's something that is not implemented yet, so it's difficult to actually have a real say on this. But the new government is talking about a reform of the existing leave system, and they want to introduce what we call the family credit. So the fact that you have a new child will generate at birth new leave, a package of leave entitlement that can be taken up by the parents and also the grandparents. So it will gather together different types of leave, what I just described. So paternity, maternity, birth, paternity, co-parent leave, time credit, and so on. So, and also introducing a leave for the grandparents. So it's not formalized yet. It has been announced, but I cannot say much more on this at this moment. So who is eligible and who is not? So as I was already saying, so for the parental leave, the self-employed are not eligible. For the birth leave, unemployed people are not eligible because everything relied on your number of years or months of employment with the same employer. Belgium actually restricts access to some leave to employees with short working duration before birth. They also limit access to some foreign-born citizens. So, for instance, for asylum seekers in Belgium, they have to have certain conditions with employment, which can also restrict their access to some leaves. Based on a quite old note already from 2017 data, in total, 7% of women and 23% of men were not eligible in Belgium, based on this exclusion from being self-employed and all the employment conditions that I mentioned before. It's really difficult to talk about the leave take-ups rates, as I was saying already before, because you have all these different kinds. So it's different if you work in the private, in the public, in education sector, if you take it full-time, part-time, a fifth, a tenth. So it's really difficult to have the statistics on take-up for the different leaves. Usually it fits the monthly payment for the users, which is not really reflected in the reality. For maternity leave, we don't have systematic information on what proportion of women do not take their maternity leave. And remember, some parts is really mandatory. For the birth leave, so ex-paternity leave, you have some information in the private sector, but nothing about civil servants. You have information about those who use the leave after 4 days, but not if they use fewer days than that. So on average, in 2023, they took 18 days out of 20 that they can. For parental leave, no information on what proportion employees are not eligible. Part-time leave option is the most popular, especially among men, but that's not something really new for Belgium. And if you look at the data since 2010, for instance, you see that the number of fathers who takes the leave is increasing. So the gap between men and women is decreasing because men take relatively more the leaves than before, especially part-time. So this is just to show you what you can find online. In purple, you have women, in green, you have men. And what you can find is not really the percentage of women eligible, it's the number of people who take it. So that's why it's quite difficult to calculate it. You don't really know the number of people eligible, you know the people who took it. And I will end the discussion here. I hope I was not too long. So there is variation in how parental leave is taken. You see if you take it full-time, part-time, or not. But what is missing right now in terms of research and analysis is to see the impact or the impact of that variation in terms of finance, career, health, well-being. There are some studies, but it's not that developed. In terms of vulnerable groups, if you look at younger, lower educated mothers or mothers with migration backgrounds, they have less access to parental leave, for example, due to different criteria and all the employment criteria that you must have to have access to it, for instance. In terms of research on fathers, you have some qualitative research in Belgium already, but less quantitative analysis. The existing focus are especially on different barriers and the influence of work environment. More research is needed on the barriers that prevent fathers and those in vulnerable groups, exactly what I just said. So lower educated, migration, part-time workers. What should we do with self-employed people who are excluded from parental leave? What is the impact of social norms, of organization, culture in the different companies? So if you are interested in this kind of research and analysis, you still have plenty of work to do, and that's also why I'm so excited to work on this also. So I just included here some useful resources that I use when I work on parental leave in Belgium, parenting leave in Belgium, not only parental leave. So thank you. Thank you very much. If you have any question, I would be happy to answer it.